Story 1. A guy I met once back in 2018 through mutual work friends at the Returned and Services League Club, and who I've only ever exchanged greetings with, messaged me out of the blue on a professional networking site about a month ago. We exchanged the usual pleasantries. He asked if I was still in the hospitality industry and whether I was currently looking for a new role. I told him that I had left the industry 5 years ago, worked in recruitment and the aviation sector for a while, and eventually, after submitting hundreds of applications, constantly tweaking my resume and cover letters, chasing feedback, and attending a handful of interviews, I had finally managed to land a role in government. I added that I'm always open to new opportunities and asked if he had something specific in mind. That's when things took an odd turn. He said, "Yeah, I'm looking too, as long as it pays the same or better than my current job." I replied that it was understandable. It's not cheap to live in Brisbane. The cost of living just about anywhere nowadays is completely overwhelming. But then he suddenly said, "Get me a job there." I was honestly confused. I thought he was about to tell me about a job opportunity, not ask me to go out and find him one. I asked if he meant within the government sector, and he replied, "Any company really, just as long as it paid $100,000 or more." He then practically started pleading with me to find him a job. I thought to myself, first of all, I don't even make that much. I'm nowhere near that salary bracket. I wish I did. Secondly, I'm fairly new to my position, so I'm absolutely not in a place to recommend anyone, especially not someone I barely know. We're essentially strangers who are just connected through professional profiles online. I considered not responding at all, but I understand how tough it can be when you're desperate to find a new job. So I decided to reply the next day. I told him that there are indeed roles in government that fall within that pay range. The best advice I could offer was for him to register on the official government employment site and subscribe to job alerts that match what he's looking for, so he could stay on top of the latest listings. He responded saying that he had looked at the site but didn't know how to format his resume or write a proper cover letter. Then he asked me to send him mine so he could copy it. At that point, I was honestly too surprised to continue the conversation. Something about the whole exchange just felt off. If he had asked me for help or guidance from the start, I might have offered to take a look at his resume. I actually enjoy helping people with resumes and cover letters, and I've done it for friends before. But this felt like he expected me to find him a job, fix his documents, and maybe even go to the interview on his behalf. Also, there's always the option to look up resources online, right? And then, about a week later, I received another message from him. It said, "Thanks for not responding. Thought you worked in recruitment and would want to help. You're a public servant. Am I not the public? It's your job to help me." At that point, I was completely taken aback. It was one thing to ask for help, but this message crossed a line. The entitlement was unbelievable. Just because I had previously worked in recruitment doesn't mean I'm obligated to assist people I barely know, especially without being asked respectfully. Even more concerning was the assumption that, because I now work in the public sector, I somehow owe him personal assistance. That's not how it works. Public servants are employed to deliver services in specific roles. Mine happens to have nothing to do with employment assistance. I kept thinking, if he had approached this with sincerity and a willingness to learn, I likely would have done what I could. I've helped friends update their resumes, write cover letters, and prepare for interviews when they asked with basic courtesy and a clear desire to improve. But this wasn't that. It wasn't just a request. It was an expectation cloaked in passive-aggressive remarks. He didn't want guidance. He wanted someone to do the work for him. And when that didn't happen, he decided to guilt-trip me for not living up to some imaginary obligation. After reading that final message, I made the decision to stop engaging altogether. I didn't reply, and I removed him from my connections. I believe in helping people when I can, but I also believe that mutual respect is key. At the very least, a bit of decency goes a long way. Being professional doesn't mean being a doormat, and having a government job doesn't make me someone's personal career assistant. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I'm happy to support people who are genuinely trying, but not those who believe they're entitled to my time just because they once said hello to me years ago. Story 2. I have my own small online business in which I make custom activity books for kids. It's a decent business, and for the most part, parents are nice because they understand that a commission-based business is a lot on anyone. Nonetheless, a teenager in college, I'm 17. I posted on Choosing Beggars a day or two ago about a parent who was upset that I wouldn't take her offer to make a 40-page book for $15. That's 40 hours of work, and the cost for a 40-page book is typically $50. She, however, was convinced that her mommy blog would generate enough customers to make up for the difference. She said I was talented for a minority and was generally rude and condescending. I woke up this morning to another email from her. I checked it and found that she was going on another rant about my irresponsible business choices. She said I was letting an opportunity slip through my fingers that could cause me a boom in business. She said she was only trying to help, and if I didn't want the help, she'd be sure to give my business a negative review. I told her if she's so confident about her exposure, I'll give her a coupon code to post on her blog, and if I get 10 orders of $15 or more, I'll refund her original purchase. I didn't receive a reply for a while, so I figured she realized it was stupid and she would stop bothering me. Well, no. I got an extremely long email back. In the email she said I was rude and she would never purchase from me again. She sent a screenshot of a post on her blog in which she basically put my business on blast. She finished the email asking me to send her my manager's email so she could file a formal complaint. Ma'am, I'm 17. I'm in college and I eat ham and I can write out the can. I know that doesn't seem like much, but I run this myself. I emailed her back to say I run my own business. I don't have a manager. I am my manager. She called me a liar and said I obviously had to have someone managing me since I was a minority. She said there was no way a minority could run a business as decent as mine on their own. I emailed her back and told her I would screenshot these racist remarks and post in the comments section of her blog post if she wouldn't leave me alone. I told her she was a terrible customer and I won't be taking orders from her again. And I made sure to end the email with "Sincerely, Management." Not a dramatic ending, but this lady was extremely ridiculous, and I couldn't believe it. Story 3. So, a year ago during the early days of the pandemic and lockdowns, my uncle's acquaintances were looking for a place to live for a while because of some reason, like they need to stay in this town for some business. Since it was hard for them to find a flat or a place here, my uncle offered them a shelter in his house for just 3 months. They accepted the offer. By the way, my uncle lives in another town because of business, so his house in this town is somehow empty, and he let his acquaintances live there for free, and they only have to pay for the electricity and water bills. After 3 months, my uncle asked them if they already found a place to live to, and they said that they didn't, and asked my uncle if they could extend their stay for a month or two, because they don't have enough money since they used it for some expenses like medicine or something, which is obviously lies. But my uncle is such a generous man, so he let these people extend their stay. 2 months later, my uncle asked them again, but they used all sorts of excuses for my uncle to let them extend their stay. My uncle let them stay, but this time it seems like he lost his patience, but he still gave them extension for another 2 months. After 2 months, my uncle called them and told them that he sold the house to my mother, so they have no choice but to leave. We thought that would be the end of it, but when we checked the status of the electricity and water bill, and the balance was high, which means they did not pay for maybe 2 or 3 months until the electricity was disconnected in the house. Now, we are trying to contact them so that they could settle those accounts, but it seems that they have deactivated their phone numbers or they blocked my uncle. They ran away without paying for the electricity and water bill and left us with multiple problems, such as reconnecting those services. That is not the only problem they left us. They also left the house with some rubbish and damaged items, such as refrigerator, lavatory, tables, chairs, television, and the comfort room's door and some room's door. They left their house with quite the opposite appearance of it before my uncle let them stay. Sometimes you would ask why people like these exist and why would people like them have no sense of gratitude and abuse kindness. I just hope something like this won't happen to anyone in the future. Story 4. This happened to me yesterday at my job, and I'm still trying to process what went down. I've been working at Chick-fil-A for about 8 months now. It's not my dream job or anything, but it pays the bills while I'm going to community college. The hours work with my class schedule, and most of the customers are pretty decent. I mainly work the drive-through, taking orders outside with those headsets and tablets. It's usually pretty straightforward work, even when we get busy. Yesterday was one of those weird slow days we sometimes get during the week. You know how it is, some days you're slammed from open to close. Other days you're practically twiddling your thumbs. My coworker and I were the only 2 people working the drive-through lanes because we were short-staffed. Our manager had called in sick, and another girl who was supposed to work had some family emergency. So it was just me and my coworker handling both lanes. When there weren't any cars around, we just chat about random stuff. She was telling me about this drama happening in her apartment complex with her neighbors fighting over parking spaces. Nothing too exciting, but it helped pass the time. Then things started picking up a little. A car pulled into the second lane, so I walked over to take their order. Pretty standard, they wanted a spicy chicken sandwich meal with a large fries and a lemonade. While I was finishing up with them, another car pulled into the second lane right behind them. My coworker went to handle that one. Here's where the problem started. While we were both busy in the second lane, cars started lining up in the first lane. I could see them piling up out of the corner of my eye, but I had to finish with my current customer first. When I was done, I turned around and saw there were 3 cars waiting in the first lane. I walked over to the first car, which was this black sedan. The lady inside was super understanding when I apologized for the wait. I told her sorry about the delay and explained that we were short-staffed today, then asked what I could get started for her. She was honestly so nice about the whole thing, saying no worries and that she understood how it was. She ordered a number 1 with no pickles and a sweet tea. I took her order, processed it, and she moved forward to pay. Then I moved on to the second car in line, which was this blue Honda with a middle-aged woman inside. That's when everything went sideways. The second I approached her window, she started losing it. She screamed that she had gotten there first while pointing at my coworker who was still taking an order in the second lane. She yelled that she was supposed to get her order done first and that she had been waiting there for 10 minutes. Now, I know for a fact it had been maybe 5 minutes at most since cars started backing up in the first lane. But she was acting like we'd left her there for half an hour. I apologized for the wait and explained that we were just understaffed today, but that I could take her order right now. That's when she really exploded. She started screaming profanities at me, my coworker, and everyone else. She yelled that all of us were jerks and that she wanted out of the line immediately. She kept screaming about how terrible we all were and called me a horrible human being. At this point, other customers in line were starting to stare. I could see people in the cars behind her looking uncomfortable. Then she started trying to back out of the drive-through lane, which is not easy to do when there are cars behind you. The poor guy in the car behind her had to back up to give her room, and he looked absolutely bewildered by the whole situation. Just when this was happening, my coworker finished with her customer in the second lane. The customer drove forward toward the payment window, where our third coworker was stationed to handle the money. But when this crazy woman saw this car moving, she completely lost what was left of her mind. She rolled down her window and started screaming at this random customer who was just trying to drive to the payment window. She yelled that she had gotten there first and that her order should have been done first. And then she started honking. Not just a quick beep, but laying on the horn like her life depended on it. Over and over again. The poor guy in the other car just sat there looking confused and kind of scared. He hadn't done anything wrong. He just ordered his food and was trying to go pay for it. But she kept honking at him and yelling like he'd personally wronged her somehow. When she managed to maneuver her car around to leave, she caught sight of our coworker at the payment window. For some reason, this set her off even more. She pointed at our coworker and screamed that she was just the same as the rest of them. But instead of driving away like I thought she would, she suddenly threw her car in park right there in the middle of the drive-thru and got out. She yelled that she wasn't done with us and started walking toward me. I could see she was absolutely furious. Her face was red, her fists were clenched, and she looked like she wanted to hurt someone. I told her that she needed to get back in her car, but she screamed at me not to tell her what to do. Then she did something I never expected. She grabbed my tablet right out of my hands and threw it on the ground. The screen cracked when it hit the asphalt. I told her she couldn't do that, but she yelled back that she could do whatever she wanted. That's when she actually shoved me. Hard. I stumbled backward and almost fell over. This woman had just put her hands on me over a drive-thru order. By now, all the customers in line were getting out of their cars to see what was happening. Someone was already on their phone calling the police. My coworker came running outside when she heard all the commotion and asked what was going on. The crazy woman screamed that I was a little brat who had ruined her whole day. She was still screaming and waving her arms around like a maniac. Then she tried to shove me again, but this time I was ready and stepped back. I told her not to touch me again, but she yelled that she would do whatever she wanted to us. The lady from the black car who had been so nice earlier got out and walked over. She told the woman that she needed to calm down right now because the police were on their way. But the woman screamed that she didn't care about the police. Then this woman made the stupidest decision of the day. She saw that some customers were recording her with their phones, so she tried to grab one guy's phone. When he pulled it away from her, she completely lost it and started swinging at anyone near her. The guy dodged her and shook his head, telling her she was crazy. That's when we heard the sirens. 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot with their lights flashing. The woman heard them too and suddenly realized what kind of trouble she was in. She started screaming that this wasn't her fault and tried to run back to her car. But she was so panicked that she tripped over the curb and went sprawling onto the pavement. When she got up, her knee was bleeding and her shirt was torn. The police officers walked over to where we were all standing. One of them started talking to me while the other went to deal with the woman. The officer asked me to tell him what had happened, so I explained the whole situation while the woman kept screaming in the background about how we were all liars and she was the victim. Multiple customers backed up my story and showed the officers videos they'd taken of her shoving me and trying to grab the phone. The officer told the woman she was under arrest for assault and destruction of property. She screamed that they couldn't arrest her and that she hadn't done anything wrong. But they cuffed her anyway and put her in the back of the police car. She kept screaming the whole time about how unfair it all was. When the tow truck showed up to move her car out of the drive-thru lane, we found out she'd left it running the whole time she was having her meltdown. Her purse was sitting on the passenger seat with her wallet and phone just sitting there for anyone to see. The officer shook his head when he saw it and said that some people just don't think things through. After they took her away and cleared her car out of the line, we were able to get back to work. The customers who had witnessed everything were incredibly nice about the whole situation. Several of them said they were sorry we had to deal with someone like that. My manager showed up about an hour later after someone called to tell her what happened. She reviewed the security footage and said she'd never seen anything like it in her 15 years of working in food service. She told me she couldn't believe that woman had actually put her hands on me over a chicken sandwich. The police called later to let us know that the woman had been charged with assault, destruction of property, and disturbing the peace. Apparently, this wasn't her first time getting arrested for losing her temper in public. Story 5. A need to know detail. It was so hot. It was about 35 degrees Celsius, but it felt like 44. Important detail for later. So I was standing in line at the checkout at my local supermarket. I think in total I had about 10 items, some frozen goods, drinks and snacks. I usually tend to take out one of the buds of my phone so in case someone addresses me, I would hear it. At this time, the woman at the cash register was taking care of the payment of one client, and there was one person in front of me. And then suddenly she appeared, the entitled mother in this story. Now, honestly, she didn't look it. She didn't even give off a mean vibe or anything. Even the way she started talking to me was overall nice and polite. At first, "Excuse me, do you mind if I skip ahead? I'm in a hurry." Now, in general, if somebody politely asks me this, and I don't have any urgent business of my own, I usually don't mind. This time, however, I didn't have that many groceries, so her delay would be at most a few minutes, while she was pushing a fully loaded shopping cart in front of her. So if I would have let her skip, I'd probably still be in the store for another 10 to 20 minutes. So I politely decline and tell her I will hurry as much as I can. Of course, this was a great offense. I had not given this woman her entitlement. She blew up instantly, yelling and screaming at me that she was in a hurry and, not kidding here, had to be home in time for her shows. Now at this time, I would like to point out that during this rant, she only said she had to be home in time for shows and that they were very important to her. There was nothing else making this urgent for her. This is important a bit later. Now, while this woman was going off, the person at the cash register went into ignore mode and just started scanning my groceries, which I loaded into a bag, while the entitled mother was going on about how I was garbage and they should ban me from the store. Now this should have been the end of it. Just turn around and go home and forget this happened. But then she said something that 1. Made me almost want to kill her. 2. Made this a postable story. While I was walking away, just about to put the earbud back in, she yells, "If you pass by my car, tell my son he's the reason he has to wait another half an hour for me." Now I'm not an extremely smart person, but in this moment, my brain made some connections quickly. What I realized was this. 1. Again, it was very hot outside. 2. This woman had been in the store for a while, judging by the amount of groceries. 3. The entire parking lot of this store had almost no shade. 4. It was about 2 p.m., so the sun was just over its peak. I rush outside and start running past cars, scanning them for kids inside. Thankfully, one of the first cars I passed has a small child laying in the back seat. This kid is as pale as a ghost, sweating like crazy, and it looked like he was only half conscious. I run back inside, and to my utter astonishment, this witch is having a conversation with the cashier while she's checking out her groceries. I grab her by the shoulders, spin her around, and yell almost straight to her face that her kid is literally dying in your car. And if you don't do something right now, I'm smashing in your windows and calling the cops. At first, she looked at me in complete confusion, probably never having been spoken to like that before in her life. Then the realization of what I told her sunk in, and she rushed outside. While she went outside, a man tapped me on the shoulder and asked what had happened. I explained the situation, actually leaving out the bit at the cash register, just saying I saw the kid in the car and knew that this woman was probably the owner. He went outside, and when I came outside, the entitled mother suddenly rushed me and got in my face, saying I was the reason she was in the store for so long and her son's current condition was my fault. Before I can even respond, the man that approached me earlier speaks up. Turns out, this man was an off-duty cop and had been in the store for a while and as such, knew that the actual delay caused by me could have not caused this. He also said he had already called an ambulance for the kid and the cops for her. I don't know what happened to the entitled mom, but she completely crashed. She just sat down on the pavement and started shaking her head, not saying much except the occasional sob or "not my fault." As for the ending, everything turned out okay for most parties. I stayed a while to give a statement to the cops and my contact info in case it went to court. The kid was okay afterwards, and since his mom got arrested, they called his dad or another male family member I didn't ask to accompany him to hospital. Update: I was contacted by the police a few days ago, last Friday. I went to the station where they went over my statement, asked if I wanted to add or amend anything I said. I didn't. They couldn't really tell me directly what was going to happen with the mother or the family in general, but said that the standard punishment, when the child is not seriously hurt or dead, is usually a gas fine. Gas stands for gemeentelijk administratief sanctie in Dutch and municipal administrative sanction in English. I think it's kind of sad something bad has to happen before serious punishment is handed out. I do not know what the amount of the fine will be, but as for me, it couldn't be high enough. I have not seen any of those people in the store or in the area in general, but I also don't know if they live near here or were just passing by the store by coincidence, or maybe they are just avoiding the store. That's also possible. That will probably be the end of this tale. Story 6. I work overnight in my hospital's COVID IQ intensive care unit, and there's this one patient who is ridiculously entitled. Oh, how he loves to order all of us around, and his favorite trick was to wait until we'd finished whatever we were doing to think of 2 or 3 other things he needed immediately, at which point we'd already doffed our PPE, personal protective equipment, and therefore had to leave, and then get pissed off when we didn't turn around and immediately do it without PPE on. And you better believe that call light was grafted to his hand. Basically, he's just an all-around attention seeker. As if you can be in the IQ and not get enough attention. Most people beg us to please leave them alone for a little, while so they can sleep. But I digress. When he arrived, he was critical enough that we had to intubate him and put him on a ventilator. After 3 days, he'd improved enough to get off the vent and switch to a heated high-flow cannula, which is a good thing where we can gradually ease people down to hopefully just a regular nasal cannula. And also it meant he could eat. So he would call us to get him jello, popsicles, ice water, snacks, etc. at least hourly, and often more frequently than that, all night long. He didn't even eat all of them. He'd take a couple bites and throw the rest away and want another one 10 minutes later. He just wanted someone to go in and wait on him. This particular night, about 2 weeks after admission, his doctor restricted him to water only until morning because his sugar was running high. This patient did not like this because there went 75% of his means of getting attention. So he decided that taking off his high flow so that his oxygen sats plummeted was a great idea because obviously we respond to those alarms damn quick. After the 3rd or 4th time of him deliberately doing this, I went in and sat down and had a blunt talk with him. I said I know it's boring in isolation. It sucks that there's no visitors allowed. And yes, the hospital's cable plan leaves much to be desired. But he's hurting himself by doing this, and every time he does it, his oxygen levels take longer to recover. I told him, I get that you don't like being here, and I don't blame you a bit, but you're sabotaging your own recovery and making your stay longer by doing this. You've been improving steadily, and the last thing anyone wants is for you to go back on the vent. So is there anything that I can do to help you relax and get some sleep tonight? He said he supposed he could use his laptop, but he needed reading glasses to see the screen, so if I brought him some, he'd stop taking his oxygen off. I'm sorry, but we don't have disposable reading glasses. I can try to help you increase the text size on your computer, and in the morning maybe you can have a family member pick up your glasses from home and drop them off for you with security. I told him. The nurse has some out there. Our unit is basically a circle of rooms with a nurse's station in the center, where we can see them and vice versa. I'll just use those. Those are her personal glasses, and she needs them. Besides, in isolation rooms, whatever comes into your room has to be disposable or your personal property. Then have the hospital optometrist come in and give me new ones. At this point, it's about midnight. We don't have a hospital optometrist. Seriously, does any hospital anywhere have an on-call optometrist? And even if we did, you're in COVID isolation. Only medically necessary staff are allowed into this unit. Can someone bring you yours? Him, getting mad now? You'll get me an optometrist. I have a caseworker who oversees my care across 3 counties. I'll call her and tell her, and she'll make you bring in someone to give me new reading glasses. The rant went on, But at this point, I am just done, so I repeat to him that none of this will be happening, because you are in COVID isolation, sir. But if you can think of something reasonable that we can do for him, we'll be glad to do it. He's still making demands about glasses, so I leave because we're clearly not getting anywhere, and contrary to his apparent belief, he's not the only patient in the unit. 2 minutes later, his call light goes off. I go see what he needs. He wants the nurse's glasses. Another call light, wants glasses. Another call light, still wants glasses. Are you kidding me right now? Another call light. At this point, I don't even say, "Can I help you?" I just tell him that it doesn't matter how many times he asks. The nurse is not going to give him her glasses, and he's a grown man who knows better than to behave like this. Our unit is full, and we need to see to everyone's needs, not just his. If he has a real need, we're happy to help him. But he needs to accept that he's not getting the nurse's glasses. So he takes off his oxygen. Now we're playing this game again. I gown up, run in, put it back in his nose, and leave. He waits until I'm outside getting wiped down, and then looks me straight in the eye and pulls it off again. I gown up again, go back in, tell him he has to leave it on, put it back in his nose, leave, and he takes it off again. At this point I tap out because I'm a patient person, but this is beyond ridiculous, and I'm about to exercise my ex-Navy vocabulary at him, so another nurse takes over. She goes in and tells him that if a patient is a danger to themselves, we have to restrain them, and deliberately removing life-sustaining treatment qualifies as a danger to himself. She tells him she's not as nice as me, so he gets one chance to knock it off. He lets her leave and then takes his oxygen off again. And one thing about this nurse, she doesn't bluff. 5 minutes later his hands are restrained, which honestly the reason I put up with his nonsense for so long was because we try our damnedest not to restrain anybody. But at least now he can't take off his oxygen, and maybe I can get some work done. Nope, he's got a new game. Throw a screaming fit. I swear to God this is a grown man in his 60s screaming that it's not fair. We're all so mean, why are we doing this to him, etc., etc., etc. It really is a tantrum, and he has no medical excuse to be behaving this way. And now his vitals are all the way screwed up, and hoo boy, he's sure getting all that attention he wanted, because now we're all in his room trying to get him to stop before he codes. Night intensivist tells him to stop it now because he's endangering his own life. He screams, "Then tell that witch to give me her glasses." And then he holds his breath like he's 2 years old. And by this point he's gotten his heart rate so high and his oxygen so low that we have no choice but to sedate and intubate him and put him back on a ventilator, which he is still on now and may not come off again. All because he didn't get his way. Edit. When I say medical reasons, I mean things like brain injury, developmental disabilities, encephalopathy, dementia, psychiatric disorders, drug withdrawal, IQ delirium, etc. Sometimes people legitimately aren't able to control the way they behave, and it's not their fault. Their actions aren't a choice. They genuinely can't help it. This wasn't that. This was a dude who couldn't fathom not instantly getting everything he wanted.